Welcome back to Lucid, a thought experiment in consciousness. We have covered a lot of ground together. Episode 1, Consciousness is primordial. There are levels: source, entity, soul, corporeal, body, and the conscious self. An intelligence deeper than your thinking mind is running your body. Episode 2, All is metaphor. That intelligence speaks through your body, emotions, circumstances. Physical reality is a symbolic language. Episode 3, You, I, everything is source. The same consciousness exploring itself through infinite forms. We are waves in the same ocean, characters in the same dream. Today, we arrive at perhaps the most practical question of all. If all of this is true, if the conscious self is just one level of a much deeper intelligence, then what's the point of the conscious self? What's the point of the ego? What's the point of you as an individual? Well, our fourth presupposition, the conscious self, the ego, is a partner in creation, not an enemy, not an illusion to transcend, not a mistake. A partner. Let's explore what that means. Have you ever had a lucid dream? A dream where in the middle of the dream you suddenly realize, wait, I'm dreaming. It's an remarkable experience, and it changes everything in that moment, because here's what's interesting. Here's what most people don't expect. The dream doesn't disappear. When you become lucid, the dream doesn't dissolve. You don't immediately wake up. The dream world is still there. The dream characters are still there. You, as the dream character, are still there. But something fundamental shifts. The dream character, who was confused or reactive or believing that the dream was the only reality, suddenly has access to a larger perspective. You remember, oh, I'm dreaming. None of this is actually going to hurt me. I can experiment. I can play. I can even influence what happens next. The character doesn't disappear, but the character becomes conscious, awake within the dream. And here's the beautiful part. The dream becomes more vivid, more interesting, more alive. Because now you're participating consciously. You are co-creating with the dream itself. So let's bring this back to our framework. The conscious self, the ego, the I that you think of as you exists at a very specific level. It's the part that experiences through the physical body. It's the part that thinks in language, makes plans, worries about the future, and remembers the past. And that misunderstanding, well, that's not a bug. That's the feature. That's the whole point. So let's revisit the story of Adam and Eve. The garden, unity, oneness with God and Source. Everything is provided. There is no separation. There's no struggle. This is what we know as paradise. And then the choice, the apple, the knowledge of good and evil. And then separation. Now, we have been taught that this is the fall, the great mistake, original sin, humanity's tragic error. Well, what if it's not? What if the separation was the creative act itself? What if Source wanted to experience what it's like to believe in separation, to forget unity, to experience limitation? Because here is what unified consciousness cannot experience: choice. If you're everything, what is there to choose between? Relationship. If there's no other, who do you relate to? Discovery. Well, if you know everything, what is there to discover? Growth. If you're already complete, what is there to become? Time. If you're external, what is there to experience sequentially? And surprise, if you are all possibilities, what's going to surprise you? The only way that Source can separate these things is to limit itself, to divide itself, to create the illusion of separation. To do this, well, it has to generate a focal point, the conscious self, that genuinely believes it's separate, limited, mortal, and individual. That is Adam and Eve. That is the fall. It's Source creating the ego, the conscious self, the part that thinks it's alone. And it's not a mistake. It is the entire game. So, if the conscious self is the creation and not the creator, does that mean it's powerless or insignificant or just a puppet? Well, the answer is no, absolutely not. The conscious self has a very specific, very important role. It's the focus lens through which Source experiences this life. Think about it this way. Source is everything. It's everywhere, all at once. It's infinite potential. The entity is Source, individuated into a specific stream of consciousness. The soul is entity, connected to physical form and managing the body. But the conscious self? Well, the conscious self is the point of focus. It's where the experience becomes specific, personal, unique. It's this moment, this choice, this feeling, this life. It is the present moment. The conscious self brings focus and intention, choice within the framework, interpretation and meaning making, the experience of discovery, the joy of not knowing, the creative act of choosing what to pay attention to, what to believe, and how to respond. The conscious self doesn't create reality from nothing, but it does choose. It does choose which aspect of reality that it wants to focus on, which interpretation to accept, and which direction to move. And these choices matter because they shape the experience. They create the new patterns, and they generate outcomes that didn't exist before. Meanwhile, the soul is doing something different. Remember, the soul is the deeper intelligence, the subconscious or unconscious or inner self, if you will. The soul is running your body. It is breathing. That's your heartbeat, digestion, and healing. It's connected to your entity and source, arranging circumstances, synchronicities, opportunities. It's communicating to you through sensation, emotion, and intuition. It is orchestrating the larger patterns of your life. The soul has access to information the conscious self doesn't have. It sees the big picture. It knows the deeper purpose. It is connected to the web of all consciousness. But here's what the soul cannot do. It cannot make choices for you. It cannot force you to pay attention. And it cannot override your free will. Because that is the whole point. The entire reason that the conscious self exists is to have a focal point that genuinely chooses, that explores and discovers. If the soul just controlled everything, the conscious self would be a robot, and that's not the point. There would be no point. So here's the model. The soul is like the dreamer. It's generating the dream, it's arranging the symbols, it's creating the opportunities, it is speaking through metaphor. The conscious self is like the lucid dream character. It's experiencing the dream, it's making the choices within it, interpreting what happens, focusing attention. The partnership emerges when the conscious self realizes it's not just the character. When you become lucid in a dream, you don't stop being the character. You just remember you're also the dreamer. You are both. And when you remember, that when the conscious self recognizes its connection to the soul, to the entity, to source, everything changes. You stop struggling against reality because you realize you're creating it at the soul level, and you are experiencing it at the conscious self level simultaneously. You stop feeling like a victim because you understand the circumstances were arranged by your soul for your conscious self as opportunities to grow and choose. You start listening to the communication, the body signals, emotions, the synchronicities, because you recognize it is you at a deeper level they are trying to guide you. You start trusting your intuition because, well, you understand it's the soul's wisdom coming through. And you start creating consciously, not by forcing or controlling, but by choosing your focus. You get to choose your interpretation, your response, and you are able to do this in alignment with what the soul is communicating. So here's where a lot of the spiritual teachings get it wrong. They tell you to transcend the ego or dissolve the self or let go of your individuality, merge back into oneness. And yes, at the highest level, that is true. At the source level, there is only unity. But you are not just source. You are also an entity that has a soul, that is existing as a corporeal body and making choices as a conscious self. And the conscious self has a job to do. You are here in this physical form, in this specific life, with this unique perspective for a reason. You are here for a reason. The reason is to experience, to choose, to explore, and to love. To bring the focused individual, the limited perspective that only the conscious self can bring. If you try to bypass the conscious self and transcend it too quickly, dissolve it before its work is done, you miss the point. You are a lucid dreamer who, the moment they realize that they're dreaming, immediately tries to wake up. Why? Well, you're already lucid. Stay in the dream. Play, explore, create, experience what you came here to experience. This changes everything about how you relate to your desires. A lot of spiritual teaching says desire is suffering. Attachment is the problem. Let go of wanting. But what if these desires are not random? What if they're not selfish distractions from spiritual truth? What if your desires come from your soul? What if the soul plants desires in the conscious self as breadcrumbs, as invitations, as directions? I want to create this. I want to connect with this person. I want to move to this place. I want to learn this new skill. What if these aren't ego-driven distractions? What if they're soul-level intentions bubbling up into conscious awareness? The conscious self's job isn't to suppress desire. It's to listen to the desires, to discern which desires are aligned with the soul's deeper purpose and which are fear-based reactions or cultural conditioning. Now, here's how you tell the difference. Desires that come from the soul, they are expansive, they are exciting, they are alive, and even they're a little scary. Now, desires that come from fear are contracting and they're desperate. I need this or else. The soul doesn't desire from lack. It desires from abundance, from what wants to be created, what wants to be experienced. It is always expansive. So the partnership between the soul and the conscious self requires one key skill: listening. The conscious self has to listen. It has to learn to listen to the soul's communication. Through the body, this feels right. This feels wrong. This energizes me. This depletes me. Through emotion, This excites me. This scares me. This angers me. This brings peace. Through synchronicity, this keeps showing up. This person appeared at the perfect moment. This opportunity aligned perfectly. Through intuition, I just know. I cannot explain it, but I know. The conscious self that only listens to its own thoughts, its own worries, its plans, its logical analysis, is cut off from 90% of the intelligence that is available to it. It's like a dream character who refuses to pay attention to the dream symbols, who insists on using logic in a realm where dream logic applies. But the conscious self that learns to listen, that pays attention to the soul's language, well, that's when the partnership comes alive. That's when you start co-creating consciously. The soul arranges the opportunity. The conscious self chooses which one to move toward. The soul communicates the direction. The conscious self takes the action. The soul provides the energy. The conscious self provides the focus. Together, they create. So yes, the conscious self creates its reality, but not alone and not from nothing. It creates in a partnership with the soul. The soul generates the field of possibilities. The conscious self chooses which possibility to focus on, believe in, and move towards. The soul arranges the synchronicities. The conscious self chooses whether to notice them, trust them, act on them. The soul sends the intuition. The conscious self chooses whether to listen. This is conscious creation. Not the ego thinking that it's God, but the conscious self remembering that it's partnered with the soul, which is connected to the entity, which is Source. You're not creating reality by thinking really hard or visualizing perfectly. You're creating reality by aligning the conscious self's focus and choices with what the soul is already communicating and arranging. So here is the practice for this week. Your morning question: what does my soul want me to know today? Then listen, not with your thinking mind, but with your intuition, your feelings, a sense that isn't so much part of you, but is you. Maybe you get a sensation, maybe it's a word, maybe it's an image, maybe it's a sense of direction, maybe it's a whisper. Trust it. Throughout the day, notice when you feel expansive versus contracted. The expansion is the soul saying, yes, this is the direction. The contraction, this is the soul saying, not this, I think you should reconsider. The evening reflection, what was my soul trying to communicate today? And did I listen? Now, you're not trying to transcend the conscious self. You're not trying to dissolve the ego. You're teaching the conscious self to work with the soul instead of against it. You're becoming lucid within the waking dream. Now, we arrive at the final question, the deepest one. We've established the consciousness is primordial. All is metaphor, everything is source, and the conscious self is a partner. But why? Why does source create this elaborate structure? Why divide itself? Why the separation? Why the partnership? Why any of this? Well, what is the driving force behind all of creation? This is our final presupposition, value fulfillment, and it answers everything. You are not just the ego. You are not just the conscious self, but you are the conscious self, and that matters. You are here to focus, to choose, to experience, and explore. You are the dream character who can become lucid. You are source, experiencing what it's like to believe you are separate. And you can discover again and again that you never were. The ego is not the enemy. It is the point. And learning to partner with the soul, well, that's where the magic begins. This is Lucid, a thought experiment in consciousness. Thank you for exploring with me.